to the brain. La da da dee. Da 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 da. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La da da dee. Da 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 da.
Alrighty, take two. I think we are actually live this time. So, welcome back, guys, to another live stream with Mitch on the mic. This time we have a note from Mitchell. We have Christopher Mitchell. So, a lot of people obviously know Christopher Mitchell for probably some of the best race calling we've ever seen, especially in Australia, but worldwide announcer. Chris, introduce yourself to the Mitch on the mic live stream.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mitch. My name's Chris Mitchell. I'm 31. Jeez, that's scary. I've been in RC for a while now, and I'm thrilled to have gone as far as I have, and very lucky to have had some pretty awesome opportunities traveling Australia, doing a lot of the major events, and even internationally with Live RC. And I'm the voice that everyone got sick of during the 2018 8-scale Nitro Worlds here in Perth.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're going to go through quite a lot of things today, mainly to do with, say, commentary rather than the actual, I guess, RC racing itself. We are going to go through a fair bit of that. We're going to go through history of, your own racing, your racing events, but we're going to sort of, I guess, stick around the sort of commentary side of things for this episode, I would say, more than anything. So obviously, first of all, before we sort of kick things off too much, I'd like to say a massive thank you to Chargers RC. They've helped me out tremendously to, get this thing up and running. It's an awesome club. If you're thinking about joining up the club, feel free to join up at any time. There's a heap of guys down there that are willing to help out 24/7. New category as well there of racing, sportsman class. It's a more of a fun class for people that are just starting out sort of racing, that sort of side of things. So feel free to head down to Chargers. You are in the Southeast Queensland region, have a look and come for a race day. I'll be there for the next event, which is a Christopher Sturdy, like a fundraiser to help Sturdy get over to the Worlds. And hopefully I'll be sort of tagging along with him for his journey as well. So on to our show, guys. As I said, we're going to be talking more so for the commentary side of things more than sort of RC racing. But by all means, any questions you have about racing, the RC racing side of things, jump on in and ask them away. So, all right. So we will start off with RC racing. We'll get this sort of rolling for the RC side of things to start off with. Now, I think you just mentioned you've been racing with toy cars for 10 years, roughly, you said?
Something like that. So, I mean, it goes back a lot further, just the enjoyment of running RC cars and having fun. I was lucky enough when I was younger that my parents got me into go-kart racing. So I did a lot of go-kart racing through my childhood when I was 8 through till when I was 16. And I always wanted RC cars during that period. And all the money and all the time and all that went into go-karting, which I'm super appreciative for, because I got some awesome opportunities to do some great racing around Western Australia and a few trips interstate to compete at a national level. But I never really got to like the dizzying heights of that level before we went to single-seaters when I was 16, and I raced them partially out of my own pocket then, because once you get big enough and old enough, you got to start paying your own way. And that's when I realized the big bad world of motorsports is a very expensive one. And being 16 years old and having, close to $30,000 of my own money invested, or at least $30,000 of debt to run my own single-seater racer in my own Formula Ford campaign really opened my eyes. But I'd done a little bit of RC in the earlier days. Dad and I bought nitro cars. Dad used to race nitro on-road back, I think, in the late 80s. And he actually, ironically, spent a lot of time raising money with the local clubs, fundraising to get the funds to build the Bayswater track, which ends up now being West Coast Model RC, which I actually got my first RC race at. So my first race was I was 12, was 2004, and we raced a bit of nitro on road. I sucked really bad, and I never went back. And until I was in my early 20s. So I got started. I had some cars with some mates, and we got started with like the Bahas and the fifth scale stuff, as you do. And I decided that was cool, but I wanted to go racing. I wanted something actually I could go racing with. So we got into a bit of electric on-road. We started with a couple of mates of mine. We got into EP on-road, so like vintage Trans Am VTA class, back when it was 17.5. And that was cool, and it just kind of kicked off from there. Like you could see, I was immediately on this ridiculous trajectory because I was watching the modcast, going, "Yeah, I reckon I can do that. Yeah, I reckon I can do this." And just ambition way bigger than my ability. But it wasn't long before I was running with like a stock touring car. That was when they were 17.5 boosted. So like late 2012, early 2013. And there wasn't much competition, not much racing in WA for the on road at the time, or not much that I saw I was really going to get much value out of, especially given I was still racing Formula Fords at the time. So I decided to go do off road and got involved there. And we went from 2013, started off in off road. So a good run at my first WA title. And I got in with people like Jared Smith. Everyone knows J Rod from his epic time over the last 10 years in RC racing in Australia. And I got involved with Riper Hobbies and Josh Payne and David Sims, and they were happy to kind of take me under the wing and show me the way and get me involved and get me learning how to be better at the driving side and the wrenching side. And it was 2014 I decided to travel to my first interstate event. We went to the Tasmanian electric off-road titles at what's it called? Southern.
Is it Launceston or?
No, it was Hobart.
Oh, okay. It was actually in Hobart.
Yeah, it was in Hobart. I forget what the club is now. Ben Hoare or Jesse Hilder would kill me for it because they were there. That's when I met those guys. But we went over there to Hobart and had our first kind of run, and it was myself, Neil Pearson, and J Rod went over there with 17.5 stock, and we went over with Paney, and we stayed like Todd Trower and a few others went. And I met all the superstars. Like the Mondays weren't racing, but I met people like Andrew Selvaggi, Jody Danner, and all that were all racing and modified. And it was just an awesome weekend. I actually came away with the 4-wheel drive Tasmanian title as like my first interstate championship win, which was pretty epic. So that kind of set the scene. And wasn't long after that I decided I wanted to be, the best driver I could. So I stepped up into modified in like 2015. I got involved with running the local club here at West Coast Model RC. I was involved with the committee for a long time, and we went from 2015 trying to learn to be better at modified, running the nationals. I remember we went to Chargers when it was at the old venue with that, like, it was like that decomposed granite surface, and it rained, and I convinced the club that they should sugar it because we were on that super hard Proline control tire, and then it kind of sucked for everyone. And it sucked equally, so it's a nationals. It's not a nationals if it doesn't suck in some way. There's going to be some aspect that's just sucky. But then trying to learn the ropes of doing modified stuff and all that. Through 2016, we went and we hosted the national title. That's when I met you. Coming over to Perth for the off-road nationals, that was pretty cool. And an achievement for me to make that modified A-main with like a last-ditch effort to TQ the last round with the S-Works 10 scale, that pillar 10 scale car. That was wicked.
And then, they were a mean car too, man. They looked like a proper. They were just a small 8 scale. They literally were. Like nowadays, I find like the 10 scales are just like
this is just a big version of the same car.
Yes, exactly.
A big version of the same car. That was a killer car. Just no one really trusted it nationally because it was different. Yeah. And and there was some quirks to it. There was, the more flogged out it was, the faster it was for some reason. Which we ran like the most busted cars, but they were fast.
Yeah.
That was cool. Those years were awesome learning the ropes. And then we went to the 2017 Worlds. So and I was involved a lot with RCRA or ArcMac back then, to helping to run the electric off-road section, with the likes of Michael Toms and Jeff Primar. Trying to step up to the plate and trying to help them run the section and move things forward, because there's always an overwhelming feeling from racers that things don't get done, but it's just like a racer's point of view. We went to the Worlds in Xiamen in China in 2017 and really got a taste of how much we actually suck, which is always a hit to the ego. And and it just was just this ongoing onslaught every week of going to the track, testing, trying to learn things, and then everything was building towards the Worlds. And then 2018, I kind of changed things up and things started to focus more on the commentary side, heading into the 8-scale world titles in Perth. But I got my last off-road nationals, which I did say would probably be my last traveling event that was at Adelaide ARCR there in Mitchell Park, and I actually managed to make both modified A mains and have a good run running in the top 5. And I walked away from that event thinking that's probably going to be my last traveling event. If this commentary stuff keeps going, I might not travel again. And that's it. And sure enough, that was it for a while. So, but took a bit of a break after that, in all honesty. I kind of got out of off-road. Some stuff goes down with committees and you just kind of get burnt out. And I stepped away from off-road, and through Ryan Maker, I got involved having a crack with some more on-road stuff. And I've been a kind of an on-road guy for the last few years, but now I'm feeling my way back into having a bit of fun and off-road, and kind of just taking a backward step, not trying to, be the superstar setting the world on fire, but just having fun with my cars and enjoying going racing whenever I can.
Yeah, no, exactly. We'll go through a fair bit of what you've sort of just run through as well, and probably a bit more detail, especially like the China Worlds and a couple of those big events and all that sort of things as we progress through today as well. I think probably the first thing I'll take you back to, and you mentioned it a little bit there, was China Worlds. That was your first world title that you attended, or have you been to wins previous to that you just checked out, or was that your first official world titles?
That was not my first that I'd attended. I was lucky enough in 2016 that Trevor Reed, president of FEMCA at the time, got me hooked up with Brandon Road at Live RC. And I'd actually been over to Beijing with Live RC in 2016. We called I arrived on the finals day, like right between A1 and A2 of the 12 scale world championship. And then I called with Live RC for the rest of the week with the touring car World Championship event in Beijing. So I got a taste for what a Worlds was like then. And it was only like 3 weeks later, I'd actually come home and I thought, because I got sick when I was in Beijing, right? And I've got this thing when I travel internationally for some stupid bloody reason, I get crook. And I'm an asthmatic. So if there's one thing in life that I can suck at, it's breathing. And that makes life even harder when you're trying to be a commentator. But Beijing wasn't the greatest time because I wasn't on form because I was a bit sick, and I came away thinking, oh shit, I've had this massive opportunity with Live RC, the biggest broadcasting company in our industry, and I've blown it. And then it was like 3 weeks later, I was back at work, kicking myself down in the dumps a bit, and Brandon Road called me and said, "Oh, we liked you in Beijing. Would you like to come and do the 8 scale worlds in Las Vegas?" And I just didn't know what to say. I was immediately started thinking like, there's no way my work's going to let me go. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford this, They're like, no, we'll pay for it. We get a hotel room in Las Vegas. You hang out with us, called the 8 scale, if my world championships. And just straight away said immediately, yes. If I have to quit my job and I end up unemployed, yes, I'll do it. And so I went to that. So Xiamen was actually my 3rd world championship. But my first going as a competitor, and there's a very different side of things going as a racer.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, I'm going to touch on, I can't go past Vegas Worlds. I'm going to touch on Vegas World because that would have been a trip of a lifetime for many reasons, not just obviously the commentary gig. I'd say that probably would have felt a little bit more sort of proper, I guess, rather than the on-road in a way. Like you're probably a little bit more sort of into the 8 scale or the off-road scene, would you be feeling, or?
Definitely at that stage of my life, I was because on road, especially in Western Australia, it must be said, and I'm going to piss off a lot of on-road guys saying this, it's not at the level. It's just not. We've got maybe 3 guys who are legitimately quick in Western Australia at on-road, and everyone else is having a lot of fun and doing their thing, and it's a great part of the hobby to have. But by comparison, compared to 8 scale nitro, especially at that time when we knew we were getting the worlds, we had a ton of WA drivers competing in that. To go to Las Vegas was crazy. I remember getting told and figuring out that I was actually going to go, and I like raced through getting my visa and what's the thing, sort of the ESTA and all that, my passport, and getting to go. And I didn't want to tell anyone until I was like there. And that started actually a really bad superstition where I don't want to tell people things that are happening until it's literally right there happening, because I'm afraid that like someone's going to pull the rug from underneath me and I'm going to wake up and it's not legit. So I didn't tell anyone I was going to Vegas until we literally were getting ready to take off on the plane. But that said, Vegas has all the glitz and the glam. I
Yep.
sat in the back of a trailer for 6 days looking at a laptop screen.
Oh, geez.
Like
Yep.
that's what Vegas was for me. It was
Yeah.
get up at Sparrow's Fart in the morning, go to RC Tracks of Las Vegas, walk through the pits, see all the pros, be too scared to talk to them, see 40 and Shane Mangu and Shane Hancock and see Paney and say g'day, and then to the live RC trailer we go, and then lock the door behind, and I was in there for the entire day, and then go to the hotel and pass out. Like that was that was my Vegas. I really want to get back to Vegas and kind of correct it a little bit because I didn't get to see much.
True. So yeah, when you were commentating for Vegas, actually, this is a question that sort of I think I get asked a little bit, but I want to know personally as well. When you were commentating Vegas, could you actually see the track itself, or were you sort of commentating through, say, a screen?
We were to a screen, so all of like the majority of the live RC's like dedicated broadcast is just like any TV broadcast, the same as you supercars and F1. They don't actually see the track. They can't see jack all. They just see what's coming through the camera feed. That's it's kind of a broadcasting to make sure that they stay bang on to what they're seeing. But there's a lot that you miss as an announcer that's irrelevant because it's not being shown on screen. Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah, no, interesting. Yeah, and definitely had to get back to Vegas and rectify that trip, because I think by the sounds of what I've heard from, say, Paney and all that sort of stuff, it sounds like you missed out on a bit on the off track sort of side of things, I guess.
Yeah, like the real opportunity I got, it was cool at the time because we were there. We were staying at the Westgate Hotel, which is like right down the end of the old strip. Which the same time Scotty Ernst was hosting the IIC Las Vegas, the International Indoor Challenge. So you had like Bruno and Alex and Kevin Hebert and like all the top on-road guys racing in this like hotel ballroom in Vegas the exact same time we had the World Championships for 8 scale out near the airport. And it was cool because I got to meet Scotty and say g'day, and I got to meet a few of those guys, and I got to see the track, but I never got to see any running. And then the biggest surprise of all is I got sick again while in Vegas. So that kind of ruined it as well. There was just one morning I woke up and like who was I calling with? Aaron Waldron, Waldo. Bless his not so much of a career anymore in this sport. He said, dude, you look green. And I was not feeling great. And we got to the track and I actually threw up. And I was just out of it. And I fell asleep in the back of the truck and woke up 4 hours later, like good as new. But I progressively just got worse and worse as the rest of the week wore on. Got through the event, got through fine. And then we had one night out afterwards. And I ended up sitting at a craps table where they roll the dice and you try to get the numbers to come up. It was like an electronic version of that. It was like a round table with like a tube in the middle. It had these massive dice. And there was a bunch of like Scotty and a few of the other, like his on-road friends and all that hanging around. And it was just, it goes around, you take turns at who gets the turn to roll the dice next. And the computer's yelling at you like, push the button. Come on, push the button. And Scotty turns to me, he's like, Chris, you are the shooter. And so it's like, my turn to press the button, okay. And I'm like, I'm sideways in the chair, just okay. Trying to get through it, just to say that I went out to the casino for one night. Before I then had to fly back home the next day. But I definitely want to go back to Vegas. But the event itself was awesome as a spectacle for the hobby. It's such a shame that RC Tracks of Las Vegas kind of closed down shortly after that. And there seems to be a bit of that curse that follows World Championship venues with the bubble bursting afterwards. And but I got to meet Chris Taco and I got to meet Jimmy Babcock, who was live announcing at the track the whole weekend. He did all the track commentary. And then I did the live RC stream with Waldo, and we had Gary Guest doing a lot of the like pit lane reporting as well. But the venue was top notch. The location is always a spectacle, even though it's just right across the road from 747's landing at McCarran Airport. The track itself was interesting. The dirt just doesn't compare to anything I've seen in Australia at our tracks. And so
Right.
trying to wrap my head around how they can have these massive holes in the track that like I could park a small light vehicle inside them, and they're just ripping buggies through them like crazy. It's like, what the hell is this? This is not what I expected. But it
Yeah.
was a very cool experience, and I got to have a lot
Yeah.
of fun, even though I
Yeah.
sat in the back of a trailer most of the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it sounds like just an awesome experience. I think that's probably what you put down to
Yeah. And it's a cool story to tell now, like 7 years later.
Yeah. All right. China World. So this is your first actual driver worlds, I guess you could say. First time you actually got to
Yeah.
compete racing yourself. How was that in comparison to say previous worlds? Obviously, completely different perspective. You got to listen to commentary coming over the speakers. Probably a bit of mixed languages and all that sort of stuff going on with China. How was that experience overall?
Well, it was good, and I had so much preparation building up towards it that was just crazy. Like anyone who puts in the effort to go to the Worlds has already run the marathon before they even get to the venue. Before they actually get on the plane, because the amount of work putting in to order stuff and get parts, and I hadn't learned my lesson yet to build new cars. And it's actually safe to say I still didn't learn the lesson up until running the On-Road Nationals last year to take new cars. So I was like trying to refurb old associated cars to get them back up to spec. And I had almost everything new. Could have just built new kits and be fine. But, you're trying to fix old crap the whole time. But getting ready to go there was this massive mission. We had the On-Road Nationals here in Perth the weekend before. So I was announcing that nationals and then having to quickly change gear and kind of refocus on running my own program, and going there and going to a foreign country that has some pretty restrictive rules as far as what you can carry into it, and what you can do in there. Like we couldn't drive, we didn't have much access, so we were relying very heavily on the shuttle bus just to get us to and from the track. And I think that kind of, in hindsight, like you would have been better served going to a European Worlds or an American Worlds where you can go out and you can do stuff afterwards, or even like if it was an event in like Southeast Asia and somewhere in like Thailand or in Indonesia, like the 2004 8-Scale Worlds was in Jakarta that Mark Pavidis won. Somewhere like that would have been a better location. But
Yep.
the story of what we could achieve in China makes an experience in its own. But the venue, man, holy hell, the venue. That's probably the best thing of the whole trip. Like we have some pretty awesome tracks here in Perth that are well equipped. So you look at some of the places like Pine Hills, that I haven't been there in a while, but they've just got the little shed that you can pit under, and you still have to bring all your own pit marquee and all that. I mean, here in Perth, we're pretty lucky with permanent pits and all that at both of our tracks. And but you go to China and it's 170 meters long, 3-story marble driver stand.
Yeah,
that's got all
crazy.
just that marble finish, beautiful stairs, hand railing, the building in the middle, and they had the 2 tracks side by side, like in the front garden of the battery factory. Like just walking in was crazy. Just looking at it and going, "Holy shit, this is a world-class venue for a country that doesn't really have a great reputation for world-class drivers."
Yeah.
Because face it, China doesn't have like that biggest reputation for world-class level drivers. But I think the next 5 or so years, that's going to change a lot once we get a lot of young talent through the game. But
yeah, exactly.
It was insane, man.
Did you guys actually get to go for like a tour through the battery factory there, similar to what we had for European Worlds?
Yeah, we did. We got a tour during the break day, because like an off-road Worlds, you have the setup day, and then you got like 3 days of 2-wheel drive, and then a break day, and then 3 days of 4-wheel drive. So we got to go for a tour through the Three Circles Battery Company on the break day before 4-wheel drive, which was really cool. There was a lot that they wouldn't show you, so like they kind of just glossed over some of the parts, but allegedly, like that's where they make all the Sun Padao and a lot of other manufacturers' batteries as standard there. But it was a cool insight into the process on how they manufacture the lipos, and everyone's walking around in like top to toe like suits, like almost like hazmat, but full netting and all that. A lot of protective features involved, and actually alongside the factory, they had this whole like hobby experience center, which we got to see on the banquet night after all the events was done. That's a story in its own, the banquet night. But like they have a whole bunch of sample stuff for like the things that use their batteries, different model aircraft, drones, cars, racing stuff. They had like racing simulators. They had just tons of stuff just sitting there. And I don't know how many people get to see that kind of experience center, but that was like a beautiful corporate showcase of what they can do with their batteries, just sitting there. And we all got treated to it after this just 8-day onslaught of getting up at 6 a.m., shuttle bus to the track, sit around for 10 hours to do 4 runs, and then shuttle bus back and go to bed. But pretty cool venue, pretty cool place. The racing itself was not the most amazing from my part. And like hindsight's a great thing, but I wish I had my time over again, knowing now in the hobby what I do versus back then. Like I feel like I always feel like I probably could have done a lot better if I were to go back and have another crack at it. But the week itself was just huge, and we didn't get much time to do like sightseeing stuff. But the saving grace for the week was the hotel had a bar, and the bar was this Western themed, like outback American saloon kind of bar. The owner was Chinese, but he'd spent a long time living in America, so he spoke fluent English. And he was happy and hospitable for whatever we wanted to do. And, that's where we spent the most of our evenings.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories from that bar. So it does sound like you spent probably an equal amount of time at the track as to what you did actually at that bar by the sounds of it.
Well, that's true, because there wasn't really much other places to go. Like, you go outside the hotel, and it was weird. It was like this 5-star Grand Golden hotel right on the water, but right out the door was a slum. It was just weird. Just this diamond in a pile of turd. It was really odd. And it was a fair walk to go to like the local shopping center district. And even then, it's not a tourist area, so no one speaks English. We didn't have internet connections to use translator apps because there wasn't stuff built into like Google devices nowadays like it was back then. And so it was just always a struggle. So we're just like, screw it, we'll just stay and eat at the bar or eat at the hotel restaurant, and then you go have a couple of beers and play some games and stuff at the bar, and then return back to our rooms and do it all again the next day. So we spend a lot of time there, and there's probably a lot of stories from the final night after the banquet at the bar, which is yeah, I wouldn't want to throw anyone under the bus by repeating some of the stories, but it was a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and enforce some of those stories off out of people. I know, Joshy Payne has some really good stories on the Action RC podcast. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you go check that out and check out the Josh Payne episode, because that one had me in stitches for like half of that episode. It was absolutely hilarious. So
he knows how to tell a good story, old Payne.
Yeah, he does. he spins a good yarn, that's for sure. And it's scary to think of the fact that most of it, if not all of it, is true. That's probably the scariest part about it. So
if only slightly embellished.
Yeah. So no, definitely go listen to that episode on Spotify from Action RC Scotty Guide. So a couple of comments we had. Lee Grace has jumped on, said, evening boys, great chat. Colin Balshaw, I don't know. Yeah. He said, howdy from Sydney fellas, and Jordan Hunting. Crash too far. So,
yeah, that's me.
Yeah. No, it's thanks for checking in as well, guys. Like it's any comments and all sorts of stuff, any questions you guys have, feel free to shout them out at any point during the episode and stuff. We're 30 minutes into this, so we've got a fair bit of time still to kill on this one, and we've got a fair few topics still to cover in this. So we're literally just covering China Worlds, and we've been on here spinning yarns for 30 minutes already. So feel free to comment on in, ask any questions for Chris or even myself. I guess I'm happy to talk as well. But yeah, so that's, I guess, your big racing event. That was an event that you sort of, I guess, you'd probably cherish for your racing, I guess you could say, for RC racing at least, your, RC racing life. I'd say, I can't think of a better word than, as a driver, it's probably your big event.
Yeah.
do you,
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
you're right. Do you see yourself going to any potential future world as a driver itself, or?
Man, I would love to. Like, I did China very well knowing that probably be the one that I can get. Not many people can afford to throw the $5 to $10 to $15,000 at a World's experience every 2 years. And not just that, but can't really afford to go spend the time and money, especially traveling from Perth all the time to
Yeah.
qualify for that experience. We think in Australia you have to travel the country and spend a lot of money moving around all the time to get your name on the list to be able to go as such. So I cherish that a lot. And I cherish the experience and what I learned. Like, although my results comparatively sucked, I think I was 52nd and 53rd. It's still not bad, not the worst. And I did okay for my ability at that time. I feel like I could have a better go now if I put the effort in. But to go and to throw down my best efforts and to meet so many of the industry stalwarts that I did, that I was able to then lean on some of those connections later on with a lot of the commentary stuff. And I still maintain some of those connections with some of the people that I met and, shared some awesome moments with nowadays, even, this long after the event. And I haven't, comparatively been over and done much else in the scene in their area. So it's really cool to know that, that I still ring on their minds occasionally, and we catch up and have a chat, and I get to stay connected to a few of those people. But the event itself, definitely a memory. I tell the story occasionally when I'm talking to people, and there's nothing more humbling. That's what I say to a lot of new drivers I meet now, that I see, who are trying to put effort in. And case in point, right now, there's a young kid here in Perth by the name of Noah Embleton. He just won four-wheel drive stock here in WA. He's looking to, step up to the mark and start to get a lot better and go to a Worlds in the next few years. I said, man, there's nothing more humbling than putting your car down and it feels amazing. You drive the best 5 minutes of your life. You walk down the driver's stand, you go to the results board and you go, oh, shit. And you realize you're 44th for the round. And that's just how tough it is at that level, because it is the world's best. And realistically, there's only on any given day 15 people who could win it, and everyone else is there making up the numbers. There for the experience, there to get drunk on the after party.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I even saw it at bloody South Australia a couple of weeks back, and it was probably one of my worst, in my opinion, one of my worst racing result weekends, but one of my favorite weekends in racing. I had a prime drive in, I think it was round 3 of qualifying in my two-wheel drive buggy. Not a single mistake, and I knew it as soon as I got off the stand. I felt like that's a top 3 run, and yeah, I then went to the results, and I think I was 11th or something like that. I was like, oh. That's a rough time. So don't know whether I overthought my results or whether everyone just had an absolute blinder of a run that one. But yeah, my third was a little bit out of the question, I think, for that round. So.
In your mind. Well, I still remember now. Payne said to me when I was really struggling that week as well, because we were pitting together in the nosebleeds, like down by the entry gate to the pits, where they put everyone who wasn't on a factory team table. Like the next table over was a bunch of Chinese school kids who had made the event. That was how far down the list we were. He goes, usually you just slow down to get results and be consistent without crashing. He goes, you slowed down and you're still crashing. That kind of stuff. That was pretty much how I ended up. And I slowed down further and I still sucked. So what do you do?
Did you manage to jump on the actual commentary side of things over there as well? You steal a mic out of someone's hand?
I did actually. Because I was there, Brandon Rhodes were there, Bob Kendall and Eric Jensen and all the people from Live RC were there. And it was Justin Wild and Aaron Waldron were up there in commentary. And Waldo said, here, just pop in and say g'day and have a chat. So I jumped on, I think I called like the two-wheel drive B main or something like that on two-wheel drive day. And Daniel Kobovic gunned it for the finish line and wrote his X-ray off on the pipe. They had the massive pipe full of sand. Yep. And I'm just like, oh, well, that's broken. And Waldo's just like, you idiot. I'm like, all right, bye, I'm out. So I did my one race of commentary and then bounced.
I'm going to have to rewatch that now. That's going to be a classic. Yeah. Yeah, here's my deets. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd have been good fun as well, just being able to do that. I've teed it up a little bit. I think Scotty Ernst is going to be calling the USA Worlds, and like I said, I'm almost guaranteed, or I'm almost certain to go over for the Worlds. He said he's going to get me into the booth there as well, which would be a bit of fun.
Scotty's great.
Yeah. So no, that'll be an awesome Worlds, and there'll be one to watch for everyone as well. Have you sort of been following a little bit with the 10 scale upcoming Worlds? Did you watch the pre-Worlds recently?
I watched a little bit of pre-Worlds. I saw a bit. I was mostly having a bit of a giggle about how a lot of the European drivers really complaining about how variable the track is. And yet we look at that track and we go, wow, that looks so easy. It's the same every day.
Yeah.
Compared to our tracks where it could be pissing rain one day and then covered in sand the next. You never know. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. I think it's a big change for a lot of people in that scene because now it's a spec tire, no source, all the palaver that comes with an IFMAR event. However, and I'm probably going to be seen as taking pot shots at IFMAR here, just the same as the Touring Car Worlds, what relevance does that now have? For one event every 2 years, they have a whole different set of rules and a whole different set of hoops for everyone to jump through, just for the entire industry to go back to what they were already doing the very next day. And how is IFMAR events relevant anymore like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good point, actually. It's a really good point.
Same thing with Touring Car Worlds, man. Did you watch the Gubbio Worlds last year?
No, I didn't.
Man, I almost got banned from the RC Racing TV YouTube chat because I was in there and I'm watching this Worlds and I've never seen touring cars look so bad on the racetrack. It was like they were tiptoeing around the track in modified because they could barely keep the cars on the surface because there's no warmers. The track is stone cold. They were using whatever control tire with this like oily as hell tire source that they only have 5 minutes to put on the tires. It's the same thing that happened when I was in Beijing with the Touring Car Worlds. And there was no warmers allowed. They had a full tire impound and they were going through like weighing their cars with no wheels on. And then you go to the next impound station while like 3 races early is up right now. And they're like, all right, you've got 5 minutes to put your tires on. And then they were going to the next workstation for the next race, the race immediately before. And everyone's waiting with the tire source. Like literally I was watching like Bruno's mechanic with the source and the spanner. And the marshal in the area is like, all right. And as soon as the tone goes, he's like, go. And everyone's like rapidly trying to put source on all their tires to get it on for as long as possible for 5 minutes with no warmers, no relevance to what we do in every other event that everyone always races with touring cars about using warmers, using the right additive with the right tire for the right conditions. It just makes the whole thing look bad.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have like a little lighter or something.
The whole look shit. It really does. It makes the whole thing look awful and just like someone's got to do something eventually. But it's IFMAR, and I've seen the track record for the last 10 years. Nothing going to change. Nothing to change.
It was actually the No Name podcast actually mentioning like a fair bit of IFMAR and all that stuff recently as well, and the fact that their website looks like it's almost like a scam website. It literally looks like a scam website. Apparently, like some of the photos and stuff on there are just repeated photos. They pretty much said it literally looks like someone that sent you an email and said, you know, click on this site. Da, da, da. So there's obviously upgrades needed all around. Yeah.
It's just silly. The pinnacle of our hobby with professional drivers and money on the line, like people's livelihoods rely on that industry, is driven by a group of people that either have no actual relevance to the industry as a whole if they weren't involved with IFMAR. They're not actual stakeholders in any businesses that can benefit the industry, and they come out with these rules and implementations that just go directly against, you know, the whole industry is going in this direction, and here's bloody IFMAR going up that way. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Even there's new rules coming for touring car bodies.
Yeah.
For the global body specification for touring car bodies, and everybody on the market is going to fail those rules. They are trying to take us back to running Mazda 6s, for God's sake.
Oh, see, that would suit me because they're my favorite bodies. That's the only body that I think I have with my tour. I think where is it? I think that's it up there. Where is it now? I think that's still a Mazda 6 just sitting there. That's the only touring car body that I have. So that would suit me perfectly.
It's cool, but they're gonna suck. Like you're
Yeah.
taking it back too far. It's
Yeah.
I don't have any understanding for why they want to try and do it. And that said, frankly, I don't want to hear it either. Just stop messing with stuff that isn't broken, and the whole hobby can move forward really well.
Yeah.
Sorry, tangent over.
I'm going to clip that and put it on YouTube.
Call out to IFMA.
Yeah, I'm going to send it straight to the emails. They probably
Sandra
never
DeGraff
check
is going to be
anyway.
in my DMs next, going, "What the hell, man?"
All right, we'll move on a little bit. We'll sort of go back to a bit of RC commentary, and I would say probably once again, your main event that you sort of everyone that knows you for it and all that sort of stuff would have to be for your commentary would be the Perth Worlds.
Yeah, it's a shame I'm not famous for my driving.
Yeah, look, there's a special few that are, and we are not part of that special few, unfortunately.
No.
His chair just wanted to drop on me for some reason. Getting too big. But yeah, Perth Worlds, like that was incredible, week of racing, week plus of racing, lead up to it and all that sort of stuff included. First of all, talk me through like getting that gig and all that sort of things to start off with and progress from there.
Well, man, it was a long process, I'll tell you that. And it's something I never even knew would be possible. And even to this day, I pinch myself with how far it's gone. I first started commentary, and this is going to take you back a long way. It was early 2014. We hadn't even gone to Tasmania yet. And it was Australia Day weekend. The Reedy race was on in Cali. And I was staying up at like 2, 3 in the morning because at that point I was obsessed with watching any racing I could. Like I didn't have a life. I was single, didn't have to worry about those kind of problems. Didn't have a life outside of being at the track and doing my thing. And I was watching the Reedy race, and that was the famous Painey whip weekend where he busted out that massive whip in four-wheel drive of Invite while leading, and then proceeded to blow out the next minute and a half. I watched that and I went, shit, yeah, I reckon I can do that. I reckon I can call that. And it just happened to be there was a club day on the very next day at Bayswater with the on-road. So I went down and said, oh, hey, guys, I'll run your timing and might commentate some of your racing, have a bit of fun. And after about one qualifying round, they were sick of me. They hated it. Because I was so loud. Because all I knew how to do was just copy what Scotty did and just yell at everything. Just screaming my lungs out. And like, what the hell are you doing? But I didn't know any better. That's everyone's got to start somewhere. But it kind of went from that, and then I started just helping out on club nights. I was getting more involved with West Coast running the off-road track and the off-road committee. So I would just help race direct on club nights and stuff. And then like later that year, I did a race out at Moorbrook. Craig Lawton actually got me out there. It was called the AKA Cup we had over here. It was just a local race, but it was just a local trophy event. I had some fun, was calling it. It was pretty cool, doing driver introductions and just all the silly shit like that with the whole industry. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And then in 2015, Craig called me up and said, oh, we're hosting the Nationals. Do you want to announce it with Ryan Ramage? And I said, yeah, of course. Why not? So I announced that Nationals, which Kyle won. I think that was Kyle's 8th. Or maybe it might have been his 10th. No, I don't think it was his 10th. I think it was his 8th. 8th in a row. And that's when he equaled the best in the country. All-time record for consecutive 8-scale Nitro Off-Road Championships won. And I just had way too much fun. And I think I learned that weekend that I've got half of a voice for it. And it was only a week later then like Craig Lawton called me up again and he goes, oh, we're hosting the FEMCA titles in 2015. Do you want to do that? And so I said, sure, why not? Let's do that. And I was working with like Ryan Ramage and a few of the boys that were running like the local broadcast, just doing the live stream and stuff on YouTube and having a bit of fun with that. And I met Trevor Reed and I met all the pros that weekend, the FEMCA weekend. And Trevor said to me, he goes, you know what? You could probably have a crack at this. And he actually said to me, he goes, you know what's good about you is you're not killing everyone's eardrums like Scotty is. And I went, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because Craig Lawton had actually coached me a lot about like through those nationals weekends and doing the state titles, like qualifying start slow, just let the drivers figure themselves out, build up. And then when you get to the final, then unleash all your fury, build it to a crescendo and then go home. So we did that for the Femke weekend, and it was that banquet dinner night we had the awards and that it kind of started getting around that they were going to bid for the Worlds. And so from then on, everything was just building up to that. And then, they kicked off the national series for 8-scale off-road, and I missed the first round. Scott Guy had actually went and did the first one in Launceston in
Right.
Tassie. And I was saying to Painting, I was like, oh man, and I'd love to go and do that. That'd be really cool. He's like, oh, we'll call Craig. And I was too shy to call Craig. I really was. I was too shy to call on Craig Lawton and be like, hey man, I want to do this. Like, take me with you. And I went to Southern Districts Model Car Club. Sorry, 2015. I went to Pine Hills and Southern Districts. They both called me up, and 40, I think, made it happen for almost both of them, actually. I did their state title events, and then 2016 came around, the National Series came on, and then we went back, and Craig called me up, actually, after Tasmania and said, I'll come to Pine Hills, and we can work something out, start doing the National Series. So then it was just rolling from there, and so it was Pine Hills, and then... Did you go to that Pine Hills event? Because that was an event in itself. That was ridiculous.
I don't think I went to it. I definitely remember it. That was the one where McBride hit the curbing and got launched up in the air down the straight, wasn't it? Yeah, I wasn't there, but I remember watching probably like 90% of it. So, yeah.
Easily the best Australian Championship race I've ever witnessed and called out just by the racing itself, because it was like... There was just all this tension because there was Kyle and there was Stringer, and like it seemed like they hated each other and they were just deadly rivals, and battling it out. And Stringer was putting one on him because Kyle had an unglued tire, and then Kyle just unleashes this like robotic brilliance and just buggers off once he fitted a new tire. But we did that event, and it pissed rain and stuff, and then there was the Perth event. Which came a few months later, and that was the day before I flew to Beijing. So I literally did Perth, finished that weekend in the wind and rain and cold, and then literally flew to China to keep it going. So like
just backing on up.
Yeah, and everything in my life revolved around learning and developing and getting better at doing the announcing. So around the same time in 2016, I got a phone call from an old friend of mine in karting, and they said, oh, would you like to come to Bunbury and call our karting event? Because the regular announcer who announced during my childhood, Brad Cross, he had a booking on that weekend and couldn't go do it. So I said, sure, why not? Go down to Bunbury, caught up with people I haven't seen in 10 years, and announced karting that I remember as a child in my childhood racing. So that started developing, and the same thing through 2017. I started taking on all of the major karting events in WA, plus then building to go to the world titles and announcing the national series. That was my whole life. That was everything.
Yeah.
Like saddest existence from the outside looking in, but I was having the fattest time ever. Just Wednesday night practicing, Friday night racing, Saturday, Sunday commentating somewhere, and or practicing again. That was just my entire life, plus working full time. So then 2018 was the same deal, and it started kind of coming up, all right, Morbix, had a couple of meetings with the committee, like Andrew Sylvie was the president at the time, with a few of the other interested parties, and I had a meeting with them. They're like, we want you to announce it. And I said, all right, but, the deal with announcing, right, because they always want you to race direct or referee at the same time. You're going to wear multiple hats. And I just said, look, I'll announce it, and but I'm not going to referee it, and it's a world championship. You need someone else to direct it. They said, yeah, no worries. And I said, then I'm at least just announcing, and I can focus purely on that. And they were talking to Live RC to get Live RC over here, and Brandon really wanted to be involved. And I was back and forth with them, trying to help put the two together to get talking and make it happen. In the end, it turned out the Live RC weren't going to come. It was more financially viable to use a local source for streaming. So they used what Ryan Ramage ended up being part of was Front Row Screens, which have now got a massive involvement with a lot of different sports and motorsports here in Western Australia. So then it was just all this build up throughout 2018. And like, I remember I went and raced at Adelaide. And then from the minute those cars put down, like they went in the shed, and it was just all focused on the Worlds, researching all the drivers I could, getting all the past data, stuff that nowadays just seems like, oh, it's just another Wednesday night for what we're doing nowadays. But and then getting to that event. So like 2-3 years of marathon work just as a commentator, just, the last thing that pops into an organizer's mind to run an event is a commentator.
Yep.
But I feel like it was such a massive build up just to get to that point. And then I realized pretty late in the piece, I was like, holy shit, I'm doing this thing solo. I'm doing 6 days of racing by myself here. I'd actually tried to bring in a friend of mine who I'd met. He came out to the warm-up race, Jared McLean, J-Mac, who now is actually a very good friend of mine in commentary. I tried to bring him in, but then I was too late to get it to Moorbeek, and they were too late to get J-Mac booked, so he had other events on, and then it ended up just being me. and I didn't really know what I was signing up for with being out there for 6 days straight. But the event, the slog of it was pretty awesome. I was just super keen to get into it and be part of it all. I very quickly found myself, for whatever reason, Corey Drachenberg from 5150 Productions, who does the Come Drive With Us series, but he crashed his rental car. So he was driving out to the accommodation not from the track, and he told me he reckons he booked through some like shitty third-party website to book his rental car and some like dingy little spot out near the airport. He reckons he was driving down the road and there was a bumper from another car like in the middle of the road. So instead of hitting it, he ditched it, but he ditched the wrong way and hit the curb, and big hard square curb, and had 4 flat tires on his rental car. So me being the glutton for punishment, I'm just like, oh, don't worry, I'll come pick you up and drop you off to the track every day. So then my days got even longer driving from because I was living in Balladura. So Balladura is here, the highway, and then Moorbeek. I was right there. I'm going out of my way by 20 minutes to pick up Corey and then drive back to Moorbeek every day and then drop him off each night. But it was cool because I got to meet him and chat with him and that every day. And being part of this just never-ending rinse and repeat, because it was it was an 8-hour day and people were getting 3 runs or something like that. I think it was a 12-hour day and people were getting 3, maybe 4 runs in with the buggies at Moorbeek. It was just nuts. But I was there for the whole thing, start to finish. And before I knew it, it was over. I didn't even register really that we got to the final day, and I sat and went, holy shit, this is it. Oh, you've got a cat.
Yeah, we got a cat on stream. This is little Pancake here. Yeah, new guest on stream. She's going to be our next commentator. She's the next commentating sensation. Doesn't say too much, but honestly, probably compared to one of us two, saying too much is a big issue. So
yep, she'd be like the Dennis Kennedy. Less is
more. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh no! Don't put up the stream.
There we go. All right.
There was this massive process building up to it, and then in the blink of an eye, 6 days was gone, and we finished the final. I'd congratulated Davide and done the interview, and then the stream was closed, and I was like, shit, what do I do in my life now? I hadn't even got to the banquet yet. We hadn't even gone to the banquet, and I was already starting to think about what am I going to do next week? Who am I? What's my personality? What am I doing with my life? And I seriously considered in that moment saying, all right, I've done what I needed to. I'm done. I quit. Go back to being a racer. And nowadays I'm glad I didn't. But we went to the banquet, and the only thing I really remember from the banquet was 2 things. There was JQ and Mayfield getting in their verbal fisticuffs. JQ bagging out Drake and all that, world's biggest club day and whatever bullshit high horse they were trying to get up onto. But the other thing was when I got to the end, and I'd not really taken a moment to think about, how many people I'd actually had around me supporting this whole journey. And I got to the end and I said, thanks for coming, and on behalf of the club and all that. And on behalf of myself, I want to say this has been a massive pleasure and truly an honor to curl this world championship. And I looked up and everyone's just cheering and happy to be part of it. And I realized then that, we'd been part of something pretty special to put together. And although it was over so quickly, that that was something pretty big.
Yep.
And,
yeah, for sure.
Part of a pretty huge moment. I felt pretty humbled in that moment then. that like, holy shit, I've done something pretty cool here, and you know, this stuff might have legs outside of toy car commentary.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we'll move on to that as well now, because we come through a fair bit of the Worlds in Perth and, you know, previous Worlds that you've actually attended, both race calling and racing and that sort of stuff. We're going to move on to your now, like you announced it the other day, your full-time job. So you've progressed from the RC side of things onto now what you've made a career out of it. You know, explain that whole process. Obviously, we've gone through the RC side of things, but explain how it's transferred into like through karting and, you know, into racing.
Well, the karting was pretty natural, if I'm honest, because it came up just happening while I was still doing the building towards the RC stuff. And then it just continued on from there. And every year I talk with the clubs. They're putting on events and major events throughout Western Australia. And I want to be part of it. They want me to be part of it. They're happy to pay for it. So we make it happen. And it's really cool to be part of that. And that kind of built up to Western Australia finally getting a national event for the first time in over a decade. Just a few weeks ago, or a while ago now, it was in April, and I got to announce at the national round, which was pretty cool. We had almost 400 entrants at a karting event, and that was on live stream. You've got, you know, pro drivers like James Golding, Nick Percat, all racing in it, and all that. That was just epic. But the karting's been pretty steady. Of all things, that unfortunately it's starting to fall to the side now with the new stuff coming through. But it was that year after the Worlds, like immediately after, I think I picked up the phone the next day and I rang Clive Silver and said, "Oh, does Queensland want an announcer for, the On Road Nationals?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we'll take you, you know, come over." And, you know, literally the week before the event, and I'd booked in to go to Queensland the following week. And then it wasn't long after that where I was really contemplating my next move. I'm like, there's no chance that, you know, all these international venues and governing bodies are going to want to pay the fee and purely pay the flights and accommodation, because it's such an extortionate expense coming from Perth to go and do their events. I mean, and there's not much on the line out there. So I'm like, what can I move into? Where could I go? And I didn't think about it at first. I was with my dad, and I took him to the Boxing Day sprint cars at the Motorplex. And Ryan Ramage, who I've worked with Front Row Screens, works there. And a young kid, bless his soul, Riley Papalia, who'd done a lot of racing with us here in Perth. He was studying film and stuff like that. And he was working as a camera operator there. And I saw him when I was walking around. He's on the rooftop, you know, with the big TV camera. I was like, holy shit, Riley's here. That's cool. And I was sitting there in the stands, and it's like 7:00, you know, main events just kicked off. They got sprint cars rolling around. I said to Dad, I'm like, I reckon I could commentate this. He goes, yeah, I reckon you could too. So I thought, fuck it, let's go. Sorry, swearing on his stream. And I messaged Riley. I said, oh, who do I talk to about working here? He goes, just go into the office, man, and talk to whoever's there. So all gung-ho bravado, I just walked into the office and I walked up to the production room while they're live. And I just walk in and introduce myself back to Ryan and met Ivo, who's in the office switching and producing the whole thing. I just said, who do I talk to about commentating here? I'd love to work for the Motorplex. And Ryan just looked at me and he goes, that guy, and points at Ivo. And the next week I came down and did the next week I came down and did a Whoop-Ass Wednesday with J-Mac, of all people, who I tried to get into the Worlds with me. And I'd worked with a couple of times doing Manjimup 15,000 motocross down in Manji for a couple of years. We did that. This was 2019, and it was like the first Wednesday of the new year, and I was at the Motorplex commentating on a Whoop-Ass Wednesday. And it just kind of went from there. J-Mac invited me back the following, or that Saturday. They had a massive event with the Aeroflow Outlaw Nitro Funny Cars. And he invited me out there and said, you know, just come and sit around and feel it out. I'm not going to promise you that you're going to get on the mic, but come and see how it all runs, and we'll see whether you want to give it a go from there. And I sat there the whole night, and I listened and watched, and I met a few people. And J-Mac did the presentations at the end of the night and is up on the trailer doing the awards with, you know, the Aeroflow superstars and the Morris McMillans of the world. And he goes, I walked up to him afterwards. I said, that was pretty cool. He goes, do you reckon you could do this? I said, oh, I think I can give it a go. He goes, I know you can. You start next week. Join us for the next event. And it just kind of started from there. Like, because I'd had so much events already booked, because I was already going to travel with what was still resuming with the national series,
Yep.
and doing some RC stuff because I started traveling with Ryan for the Australian Touring Series. And I think it was only a few weeks after that we went over to South Australia with Ryan and the ATS, and I did a couple of events that season, and it was pretty good. I was good enough that they actually invited me to come host their awards evening at the back end of like my debut season. I was hosting the awards evening, so I'm like pussyfooting around because I don't know anyone. Like I barely tell up from down at that point. My head was on a swivel and hosting their awards night and all that. Then the next season they called me back and then like, all right, let's go again. You know, let's keep going. And I started developing more of a passion for drag racing at that stage. I was just doing drag racing, and then doing a lot of the Woolpass Wednesdays and some of the burnout events, and kind of learning more about the industry, more about the sport throughout like late 2019. And then we got through 2020 and COVID hit. And we all thought it was done. Like there was, right as COVID came around, there was a massive storm that came through Perth and took out, actually lightning hit the timing boards at the end of the drag strip the Thursday before we ran the Western Nationals, which is like the biggest event of the season here in Perth. And we had 2 top fuel cars here. And that we were fearing like we were going to have to cancel the event. Then all this news started coming around about this virus and COVID, whether things are going to get cancelled or not. We ended up running the event under like full capacity. And then the very next week, COVID struck, took down the Grand Prix, and everything just stopped.
Yep.
And it was just a wild time. Like we didn't know whether we were going to get careers going. We thought Motorplex would be closed forever. All sorts of shit. So I didn't know what I was going to do, and I just joined up and did a few things with a little bit of iRacing announcing, and was getting involved with that with a few friends of mine, with like John Lee through Racecraft Simulations and the likes. But then when it all kind of restarted again, the back end of 2020 for the new season, all the landscape had kind of changed, and they were looking like JMac was looking at stepping aside and getting onto his race bike program. So he needed a new lead commentator to fill his shoes. And he just said, well, you're up, off you go take the spot. But there wasn't much leadership within just commentary at that point. So I did this season and I got to work with everyone there. And I got to work with some of the real senior guys who were in the scene at that time. Likes of Richie Howlett, who you would know him from a bar of soap, but he's a household name in WA drag racing because he was announcing back at Ravenswood, 30 years ago, and still had a major hand in the scene through the early days of when I started. But just from there, it continued to grow. Like I did a season at that level, starting to get some really big calls in and making some cool things happen. And then it was the 21. Hang on, I got to think now. Am I correct here? Yeah, 21 season, right at the beginning of the 2021 season. And I'd had meetings with the management and they were like, we want you to be the lead announcer. We want you to carry it all and organize who's on, who's not, do rostering and like anchor the show and be kind of the main guy. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know whether I'm ready for this, but we'll give it a go. And, it was like 2 days before opening night. So the opening night we have here, because it's a multi-faceted venue where we've got the drag strip and the speedway, we do drags, speedway, and burnouts all in one night. And I was actually at the hobby shop buying stuff to go race at the, I think it was the WA titles, like doing the state titles a few weeks after that. And Gavin Migro, who's the speedway manager, calls me up and he goes, "Oh, I understand you've been wanting to do some speedway for a while, Chris." I'm like, "Yeah, been keen on it, but opportunity hasn't come up." He goes, "Oh, do you want to come and do opening night as soon as you finish the drags? Come do the infield, and we'll see how we go for the rest of the season." So immediately I got like 2 days notice to learn everything I can about speedway, more than just being a spectator and observer, like to know everyone's name, everyone's cars, everyone's details, and then be able to talk to them and have the courage to do that. So, and then it just took off from there. Like we did, that season was epic. We had a lot of fun. And I've had some great tutelage and coaching from some massive names in the industry. especially the last 12 months. The likes of Dean Neal, who he was only just on the Sprint Car Hub podcast talking about his involvement or him putting together and being the kingpin to make the TV deal happen with the sprint cars here in Perth. You know, of all this country, the sprint cars that are on TV are in Perth.
Yep.
On a regular basis on live TV. It's pretty cool. And getting to be part of that even has just been huge. To then the last 12 months or so having a lot more involvement with the drag side, and they've gone through some changes at the venue. They've had some people come and go, and with that, and with the new ownership that took over the other side of COVID of the venue, with Evolve Facility Management taking over ownership, the general manager and whatnot approached me and said, we think we've got a new job role that would be really well suited to you. Would you entertain it? And I sat and thought for a minute, and I said, well, yeah, if we can make the money work. Like if the money side of things can make work, and I still want to be a commentator. Yep. I don't want to go into working for the venue and then pigeonhole myself as just this guy that works for the venue and maybe not get opportunities to go call at some of the big things like that I've done recently, with the Australian Top Fuel Championship or any opportunity that might come up, because you never know when the phone's going to ring. Like I don't want to, throw away those opportunities because I'm working there. And they said,
yeah, for sure,
we can make some stuff work. So the last few months of conversation back and forth a little bit, and it was only a few weeks ago that we put together a full-on deal that is going to have me taking on a new role, and I'm stepping out of engineering and CAD design for the last 12 years and moving into taking on some new challenges. And it's actually, in all honesty, it's probably drawing on some skills that I might have started learning when I was doing stuff with the committees at the tracks, with Bayswater, when I was helping run the club and organizing things. A drag strip and a speedway is a lot bigger than a toy car track, but the concepts are still the same. What you're learning about marketing and advertising and trying to get people involved, to then how you spend the money, video production, stuff like that. That's all my new role, and I'm really excited now that I've maybe made that first step into turning what started out as just some idiot on a Friday night who thinks it's cool talking about racing to actually full-time employment and working in something that's incredibly passionate, that I can really kind of go further, because it's the thing, and it as well, and I know there's a lot of people out there listening right now going, they know it too, because you have your full-time job and you've got your life commitments and everything you're doing, but then you've got this thing over here that you really like and you really want to do. And while you're doing all these things, you can't stop thinking about your hobby and your passion and what you want to be doing. Well, now for the majority, those two are the one. And there's so many opportunities and so many things that could be done here that I've actually had to pump the brakes on myself and just say, hold on. We're not actually working there yet. Like, I don't start till July. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit, get in, feel out the role, and then start to see what's there and what we can do. Because otherwise I'm going to drive myself crazy.
Yeah. No, exactly. Actually, we've got a really good question here. And actually, probably one of my best questions I've received so far, from Mr. Tony Firth, probably one of the most legendary people in our community at the moment. How was Coney born?
So Coney, I got a lot of credit for Coney, which is not, I don't deserve it. Coney was actually born, so there's a few people involved in the Speedway who were, some are still involved and some are semi-involved at the moment. Jordan and Craig Stewart were involved with the Speedway for a long time. Jordan's like a multi-time Australian fifth scale off-road champion and quarter scale Speedway Australian champion. With a lot of good wins under his belt. And Craig's the kind of like engineer mastermind. Craig's his dad. They actually built Coney. So in Speedway, you have the requirement on a restart, especially in sprint cars, to have the marker cone in the middle of the track, and everyone has to go around the cone. The problem is the cone has to be placed out there by an official, and they're standing on an active racetrack, potentially in harm's way, where it's on mud. They could slip over. And they could hurt themselves, and they're standing where the race cars are, which you really don't want to be. So they designed and built this cone that was remote controlled. And the idea is that someone can stand on the infield, drive it out, park it, and then as soon as the car goes by, bring it back in, and it's safe because it keeps the officials behind the wall and all that. So it was, what was it? It was early last year, last season in 2022, that I was down there on a Friday night, and one of the other people heavily involved with this program was Mikey Rimmer. And Mikey works full time at the Motorplex. He's the track curator. Mikey's actually a bit of an old school driver and had a great talent at driving back in the day with Fiskale and Nitro Truggy, Nitro Buggy, and the likes before he transitioned into doing a lot of the track curation and now works full time at the Motorplex. So I was up in the commentary box calling Friday Night Speedway, which is our Fast Friday series, more like a club level racing rather than like the Super Speedway big TV show that we do for the big events. And there had to be a restart, and this cone's getting driven around. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Where's this cone from? Like, I've never seen that before. And I sent a message to Mikey straight away. I said, where is that cone, and why am I not driving it? And then they'd actually not run it yet on a main event because they didn't have anyone who would be capable of driving it. And so they said, screw it. We'll bring it out for the next event, which was the very next night. And we won't tell anyone. We'll just spring it on them. And so it's an X-Ray XB8 with Truggy shock towers and some like aluminium angle iron bolted to those with some pressed riv nuts in there, like slammed on ultra heavy sway bars and super heavy short springs with a 2-cell battery. Actually had two 2-cell shotgun battery packs packed on top of each other. So if you had to use it a lot, you could just unplug one and plug the next one in and keep it going. With an R1 21.5 motor bolted into it, and then like this massive heavy aluminium body over the top with what was an actual cone, like an actual traffic cone with the base cut off, like riv nutted into that. So Coney was born through somebody else's input, and these guys, the stewards, had built it and tested it and had it ready to use, but no one was going to be there to drive it. And I said, well, I think I'm kind of capable. Even though I've only made a couple of Australian Championship A-Main finals, so maybe there's someone more talented to drive it than I in the venue. But I'll wheel it. So the next night, we're out there in one of the heat races, and we were worried about it getting stuck in the mud. We still are worried about getting it stuck in the mud when the track's a bit wet. So we wait until the first like round of heats is done and the track firms up a little bit. And the cautions came out, and I said, Mikey, it's time. Like, let's go. And I fired up the like ready to run Spectrum radio that was with it, and fired it up and put it out there. And the camera guy comes around and focuses in on it straight away. And holy shit, I have not heard fans screaming for something so silly in my life. They just lit up and they thought it was hilarious. And it just kept going from there. So like we got so much airtime, and like even at the time the Motorplex was streaming on Dirt Vision. Even like people in America are watching live on Dirt Vision because that's the same hosting platform for the World of Outlaws sprint cars. And they're watching from America like, holy shit, what is this thing? You know, remote control code. This is crazy. We were having so much fun with it. You know, we were worried about it getting stuck out there, but it worked beautifully. And it was a hit. And it was funny, actually, that night, usually after a Speedway event, we like to just let our hair down a little bit, have a drink, chill out, and we'll go for a walk sometimes, and we do a cushion walk. Mikey and the team have built this world famous cushion walk where you have to take something silly out with you, and you have to walk the whole cushion of the Speedway with it. Everyone gets around their silly, whatever stupid shit thing they brought out to the track, and they all take a photo. So I brought the cone. And it actually does a whole lap of the Speedway from the exit gate. Like, it does the whole half-kilometer lap very slowly, but it does it. And only about halfway around the next lap that we were just walking around, the steering servo fell apart. So we're lucky that it didn't die when it was on the racetrack. But that's how Coney was born. And since then, every event, we always get asked, you know, when are we bringing out Coney? And it's become like a staple of things because a lot of the kids love it. They think it's awesome. Because they've seen movies like Toy Story where the dolls are doing that running across the road thing with the traffic cones. And it's awesome because it gets them involved, and it's just another cool spectacle that the Motorplex has that no one else does. That was until it got run over. And we knew it was always going to be a risk. But Mikey assured me that the cone's only up until that moment, the cone had only, I think, been hit once in like the
Right.
20 years that the Motorplex had been running Speedway. And so I didn't think it was going to happen. And I drove it out there. It was a limited sprint car feature race earlier this season. And the cars are coming by, and I always still flinch, just like as the cars are like, I'm like, oh geez, don't hit it. And then just over the top of it. And and then it suddenly dawned on me, because this was a restart. It was like a green, white checker restart. Are they going to stop the race because the cone's in the middle of the track? Because that thing was flattened. If you've not seen the footage, it's in the highlights reel from Perth Motorplex, from their season highlights on their Facebook page. Go check it out because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Carl Langdon was just incredible in his commentary of it, because I'm on the infield. I can't do anything. But it got absolutely flattened and then hit about 3 more times in the rest of that feature race. And since then, we don't really trust it around limited sprint car drivers, because it's the thing about limited drivers and cones, apparently, and running into each other, that's a bit of a stigma. But we got it rebuilt and we got it back out there, and we've used it again since then. But there's some plans afoot to have, well, it'll be version 3 of a new cone. We're looking at building a bigger and better, and I want to put some more horsepower in it and do some dumb shit so we can have some fun with it. So there's some plans afoot, but it's been great because I got to go back to something that's me. Like, I'm on the infield commentating, but I've got a radio control car that I can drive. Who would have thought, 10 years ago when I picked up a microphone at West Coast Model RC, that I'd be driving a cone on TV on 7 in front of, a field of 24 900 horsepower sprint cars. It's just, you couldn't make it up, but it's there and it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Yeah. No, I've seen, I saw the early footage of that. I think the first time you debuted it, and I always thought, what will happen? Because I've seen it twice at Archerfield Speedway where the cone's been absolutely nailed. And I thought, wow,
well, usually it's attached to a rope, and some poor bugger on the infield's holding it and goes, whoa, from his hand. Which is worse.
Yeah, I can imagine it'd be terrifying to have you once again a 1,000 horsepower bloody car just all of a sudden ripping the bloody cone out of your hand. But yeah, no, I did think about it as soon as I sort of saw you driving the car in. I thought, what happens if someone clips it? So I haven't actually seen the footage of it actually getting hit, so I'm gonna have to watch that. I've shared the actual footage of the car itself, you driving it around, that sort of side of things, onto our Facebook page. But yeah, I haven't seen the footage of it getting hit yet. So.
It got to the point actually where we made an RIP video for it, like an in memoriam kind of like Vale Coney video for it, because we had people writing in on Facebook and sending messages to the Motorplex like, is Coney okay? Did it get hit really bad? Like, is it going to be out again? My kids love it. We put googly eyes on it. So it's got like these massive freaking googly eyes. We had a COVID flare-up last season for a little while, and it was during the summer season of Speed Week. So there's like 7 nights of racing in like a 3-4 week period. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately, we had some COVID cases in the state, and Western Australia has been really well known for some pretty harsh reactions to the COVID cases over here. So we all had to wear masks. And I had like a telephone pole with a microphone on the end of it, so I could stay like a meter away to do interviews. And I had Mike and they had theirs. So we put a mask on Coney, and just to do with it. It's a freaking cone that's got a personality. And I think a career highlight for me in my RC racing career is driving a cone in front of 5,000 fans. But what it's created is just so much bigger than just one single person. It's actually like it's got its own little following that families and mums and dads and kids just freaking love it. So it's awesome.
He needs to have his own Facebook and Instagram page.
Oh, we'll get there. Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll get there.
But yeah, a little bit. I mentioned our local speedway, Archerfield Speedway, and I went inside local. It's a solid hour away.
That's a shame.
Tonight. Yeah, tonight and tomorrow night is literally its last 2 nights, and it's actually quite a devastating thing. Not just that it's closing, but tickets were actually hard to get. Like, I didn't even realize that tickets were on sale until about 2 days ago, where they put up a post and said tickets are sold out for Saturday. And I thought, Oh, yeah, that's cool. I guess I don't
Yeah.
even get to see the last big night. My old man actually used to race there a long time ago, and at that stage they call it stock cars. It's changed a bit since then. I think they still race it over in New Zealand as a stock car, but yeah, we call it something completely different nowadays. But yeah, so it is quite a sad day for, I guess, the Southeast Queensland region. Obviously, we do have other speedways, Toowoomba, and a couple other ones that are sort of semi-local, but we're talking a good, 2 hour at least drive away. I mean, Toowoomba Speedway
near
is
the
to
CBD.
Western Toowoomba. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that our local speedway is going to be about 2.5 hours away. So
Well, it's the same
hopefully,
thing that happened with Parramatta in Sydney when Parramatta Speedway closed down. It leaves such a massive hole in the industry, and for so many people, and people don't realize how many people it touches, because even though the facility can only hold 10,000 people, there's 20-30,000 people who would be affected, who maybe can't travel to an out of town venue like that as easily with work and family and travels and whatnot. So it's hopeful that what happened in Sydney can maybe happen in Brisbane, where the government steps in and helps build a new world-class facility, upgraded speedway for the masses.
Yeah, no, it's definitely necessity for the Southeast Queensland region. I think as good as Toowoomba Speedway is, and personally I haven't been there, but a lot of people rave about Toowoomba Speedway. But I think there is something that is quite necessary for the sort of Southeast Queensland Gold Coast, between Gold Coast and Brisbane region, to have like a proper speedway. Whether it be, world class like what Parramatta Speedway is, or even Perth. Like Perth seems to have an incredible facility over there. I'd love to see one of those two tracks. Or we just get something that is on par with what Archerfield Speedway was. It'd just be good to have a track in the sort of Southeast Queensland, like right in the heartland, I guess, of Southeast Queensland again. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens, but nothing literally is happening at the moment. So we'll see what happens.
It's just a sad time for it to be on its last legs this weekend for their final ever night. Now, it's to some, it's a bit of a broken record, because they've had their final night a few times over. But it looks like this is the final nail in the coffin for Archerfield.
Yeah. I it's funny you mention that. I remember Luke Turner, one of the locals here, he actually mentioned, he put up a post like, this could be one of our last seasons. I thought, no, they'll be there for another 5 years. Like 100%, they'll be there for another 5 years. I've said this, I've heard whispers of this place, Archerfield Speedway closing for literally forever. But yeah. It seems like it is coming to fruition now, and I think it's pretty much done and dusted. It's all in the books now. So off topic a little bit, but nonetheless, it's on topic for I guess your future. I guess in a way, in certain ways, at least
a little bit like that.
Yeah, and I guess not even potentially even my future. You never know. You never know at all. So
you got what it takes. You'll make it. Just keep pushing, mates. Yeah, some idiot from Perth can do it. Anyone can.
Oh, no, they're breeding pretty dumb down here, mate. Don't worry. Yeah. Nonetheless, all right. We've been talking for about close on an hour and a half now. Jesus. I feel like we could probably talk all night. But yeah, I think the main things obviously we skimmed over is, first of all, your start up into racing and stuff. Actually, we haven't talked a massive amount about, how you actually, I guess got introduced into racing more than anything. So what was the first car you ever drove?
In RC cars?
Yeah.
So like I said earlier in the piece a little bit, my dad used to race nitro on-road cars in the late 80s and stuff. And I was about 11 years old at the time, and like I'd been at go-kart tracks, and one of the older kids, the older kids are always cool. They're out there after racing with like, remember the nitro, the Traxxas Jato? They'd be out there ripping around with one of them, you know, or the original, the old like Tamiya nitro on-road cars,
right?
And or like a TT01, ripping around with one of those. And I always thought, that's freaking cool, man. Like I want one of those. And so as a young kid with access to the internet, I started looking at them, and I started watching all the videos I could and finding all the stuff. And we were planning actually at the time to go over to Dubbo to race in the Super 8 series in the karts. And Mum and Dad kind of said to me, they're like, all right, well, you can go to Dubbo or you can have an RC car for Christmas. And I was like, oh, I want to go to Dubbo. And then it turns out we didn't go to Dubbo. And it was it was 2004, I think, and it was at Christmas, and Dad decided that he would have a crack at resurrecting his RC racing career at the same time, and we bought 2 matching Kyosho Nitro Onro cars. It was like the V1S2, and straight away his had like all the hop ups and the 2-speed gearbox and the quick motor and the good pipe, and mine was just bog stock. But we kind of broke them in and had a bit of fun at a local car park, and then we went down to Bayswater and had a run when that on-road track was still a separate club. So originally it was like West Coast Model Rally and then the on-road track, and they were separate entities entirely. And I went down there for like a practice day and did some practice, and I was like having a bit of fun. And then we did a race day, and I didn't do too well, but I made the A main for like their sport, like pool start engine class, like their entry level nitro touring car class, and it was pretty cool. So that was the first car I drove, but we never went back after that. We kind of they're still actually on the shelf in my mum and dad's shed. I tried to resurrect them a couple of times in my teens, but never really got it going. But that kind of just kicked off this rinse and repeat cycle of me getting bored and wanting to get an RC car, researching and finding something that I wanted to have, and then buying it and getting bored with it and throwing it to one side again. So I went through that cycle with like Losi Mini T's, some mini Kyosho Mini Z's for a little while. I had a GV Racing like Exterminator ready to run for like $500 with a radio with the old 27 megahertz transmitter. Like over the next few years in my mid teens, I had those, and then I was like 16, and I was getting tons of work over the Christmas period working in a kebab shop. And I thought I really wanted a Baja 5B. Like nitro's a little bit too hard, but electric I don't get much running time out of. So I want something that runs on unleaded because we've got it for the go-karts already. So I just pinch some fuel off the go-kart stash, we can go run a Baja 5B. But that was $1,600 then.
Oh, wow.
So like I saved and saved and saved over all that Christmas holidays work period that I was getting at 16. And I finally had enough money to buy one. And my parents actually came to the table for Christmas, and we actually went out and I bought all the money that I had worth, and then they chipped in the rest to buy like the SS, like the kit version. And Dad said, like, if you build your own kit, you'll appreciate it more, so you might have more fun with it. I was like, okay. And we bought like a proper Spectrum radio, and I had that for a while, and I actually went pretty crazy on it. Like buying engines and all the hop up parts, and I like just kept buying shit endlessly over and over, like hopping it up. And I think that's kind of set the tone for the modern day. But like I had that for a while, and then it got too expensive, and we got into the Formula Fords. So then I gave that away, and then I got my first full-time engineering job, and I needed some way to bleed money apparently. So I bought the Losi 5T and had that.
Yep.
And then I got the itch to go racing. So I sold the 5T and got into vintage Trans Am, and then like 20-something different cars. And 10 years later, we find ourselves here.
Actually, I think your old man's actually chiming in. He's got well done to date, and Dad. Is it Robert Mitchell?
Yep, that's my dad.
Yeah, he said, watch your comments, I'm listening, and then it proceeded to say, and I think there must be a story backing this as well, which will be interesting. He said, my ankle is still sore in relation to the fifth scale side of things. So what's going on here? What's happened here?
Well, I didn't know how to drive. I was young, and we were out at a park and beating around. And this is the thing: when it's unstructured and you don't have a track to drive around, you just point it wherever you want and pull the trigger and just let it rip. And I cleaned up Dad's ankle once. It took down like there was a tree in the park, and there's nothing else in this freaking park except this one tree, and I freaking hit it, man. And it was like that big. It was like that solid, and I snapped that thing clean off. So you know that thing packs a punch. Like the Bajas are like 13 kilos, but I hit it with that. I had that 5T truck. I hit the tree with that, and they're like 17 kilos. Like back then, they were hefty things. And I snapped that tree off and didn't tell the council. But probably a bit more structure is good now because we have a track. I have a track that I can go to and practice, and I don't tend to go to the park and break stuff.
Yeah, no cleaning up the marshals now.
Yeah, none of that. Almost decapitated the marshal the other day. That was a bit sketchy. We were out at Bayswater with my new 8 scale, and I literally brand new this S-Works 8 scale, and we'd worked out it was a Friday night racing, and we'd worked out like the new track build. I helped the club design the new track, and I wanted a triple double section, and so it's like a 6 meter triple, then a 6 meter landing section, and then it's like a 4 meter double. So from the takeoff of the triple to the first takeoff of the double, it's a 12 meter quad. 10 scale can't do it, but if you get it right, an 8 scale can with the EP8. But I didn't realize there was a marshal like crouched down right at where I was going to land the car, and like I'd run wide, and the car had like curved out, and the marshal was here, and it like just went straight past him and landed the quad. So didn't hurt him, it didn't hit him, but I landed the quad, and that's where the glory is. But I don't recommend that to anyone who's not willing to then front up to the cold hard facts that you may have just given somebody a head injury with a 3.5 kilo car.
Yeah,
I won't be doing that when there's people nearby anymore.
No. And it sounds like you're sending it quite a distance through the air where you have very little to no control as well. So
yeah, that's the thing. And it was like 1 in 10 you could make it too. Like I'm pretty sure I tried it 10 times and I crashed 9. So, not like you're going to be doing it during racing, but
no.
Yeah, just always keep in mind there's people around.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Alrighty, mate. We'll start wrapping up there. We've been talking crap for about an hour and a half now. I appreciate you so much for jumping on the show, and I'd say somewhat of a pioneer, I guess, in Australia in some ways. You know, obviously we've had commentators before you and before myself and all this stuff. You know, Scotty Guide obviously did a fair bit of commentating way back in the day, and
in the earlier days for sure.
Yeah, so like we have, you know, not exactly a pioneer of the previous, I'd say, era, but of say the live streaming era. The modern day era in a way, I guess, you know, where, you know, people from the other side of the world can see exactly what we're doing in live time and all that sort of things. So, you know, I'd say pioneer, pretty much that sort of side of things, especially.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I want to put it out there to anyone before you jump on that comment. If for anyone who's involved in their local club and wants to give it a go, just talk to your local club. Because clubs are volunteer run. They're always looking for people to help out. And if that's where you start and that's where you find yourself enjoying yourself and having a good passion for it, if you're perseverant and you're passionate and you've got some realistic goals in mind, the world is your oyster. And even for people like you, Mitch, you know, you kicked things off a few years after I did, but for where you've got to now, like you can go anywhere from here. And just to think that I got this far already, I pinch myself every year, and every year it keeps getting bigger. So who knows what the future holds.
Yeah. One more comment from Cody Ireland. This will be our last comment. He said, "Okay, you've convinced me. I'll try the quad."
Yeah, the quad is on.
Yeah, it's going to be a quad competition next race meeting.
And suddenly, we're going to just relocate that marshal position to the other side of the track real quick. There's no one sit on that box, please.
Yeah, the end of the 5-pack. Just wait for the cars with front arms just ripped off it and stuff. They can just pick up the pieces.
I just tend to cartwheel, man. It's weird.
Yeah, they do.
Like we have a kink in our back straight, and we crash on it all the time. And I hate that kink in the back straight. You crash there. You've been to Bayswater. You crash on that back straight. You end up in the on-road car park. Like it goes a long way. It's like a 25-meter cartwheel that just keeps going. It's just nuts.
Oh, geez, yeah. No, I need to get back over to Western Australia, and by the sound of it, it is in the pipeline. I might be back over there later in the year. So
Off-road nationals later this year.
Fingers crossed. So yeah. We'll see what happens. You never know. hasn't come out yet, but we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll have to get you back in the booth as well. Nah, too easy, man. I appreciate you coming on so much, man. It was a great chat, and you know, I'm going to have this on Spotify. I'm going to have this on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. If you want to re-listen to it anywhere on there, guys, by all means, you know, flick back through. People that are just tuning in now, if you have just tuned in, you know, go back through and have a listen to the whole conversation. We've got a fair bit that we talked about, and a lot of good moments and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, thank you very much, Chris Mitchell, for jumping on and having a chat throughout the night.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Alrighty, guys, we'll wrap things up there, and we'll see you in the next live stream, guys. Thank you very much. Peace out.